Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 526, Deck, Bag, and Pool Building Games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by Game Toppers LLC. Go to their website, gametoppersllc.com. Check out what they have. They have some amazing product that will beautify your game room and make every single game an amazing experience. We love our game toppers. We love our mats. We love all of the accessories that we have for our toppers. Go to their website, see what they've got, see what fits your game room, gametoppersllc.com.
And while you're out there on the interwebs, stop on by meeplenation.com, where you will find access to all of our past episodes, some interesting blogs, photos, links to our social accounts, and a link to our Patreon account. We love our patrons and the support that they give to the podcast. It allows us to improve the podcast in a whole host of different ways, and we are so grateful. So if that's something that you would consider, hit that Patreon link and go become a patron. Also, you can email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you. We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Douglas Stewart.
I'm Nathan Howard.
And I am Andy Holiday.
All right, it is that time of the episode. It is time we talk about some highlights. Does anybody have a hankering to go first?
Ooh, me, pick me.
All right, Doug, why don't you kick us off?
I'm excited about this one. I was really stoked. I didn't know a lot about this one other than mostly just the theme and that it was a draft and write game. So the game that I want to talk about is Draft and Write Records. And I had only heard about just like the theme like this, like, oh, you're going to build a band and you're going to get your assets and your agenda in order and you're going to go on tour and you're going to do all this cool stuff. And then I was like, okay, well, how does it play? And it's like, well, you draft cards and then you do what's on the card. So rather than like the traditional, like, you know, rolling a dice, like roll and write, or flipping cards, like flip and write, this is a draft and write. So think like Seven Wonders, that mechanism, right? So everyone gets a hand of cards, you pick one and pass it, and it's going to switch from round to round. You play, everyone gets 5 cards, you're going to draft 4 of them, and you're going to play over, it could be, it's rare, but it could last 5 rounds. It'll most likely last 6. It could last as many as 7 rounds. But you're just going to draft cards and build out your band. This does what other roll and writes and stuff do, and I don't think there's anything like incredibly unique about it until you get to the part where you're building your band, which is, I think, super, super cool. So you have a lead singer, you have 4 players, like members of the band, and then you have 3 producers, and you have a place for 4 stagehands, basically. And when you draft any one of those, they come with these little icons. They're colored icons that are on their card. And you actually pull out colored pencils and you fill those in on your sheet around where that band member goes, or that staff, or whoever it is. And then as you add them, you're trying to get the nodes, those colored nodes, to line up or to match. Right. You want the colors to match. And every time you can get a color match, you get to go down to the harmonize section of your sheet and take a bonus, because it represents the different members of your band and staff harmonizing and getting along and working together.
Well together, yeah.
And I really love that from a thematic standpoint. I thought it was really well done. And I always make the mistake. So I've had the opportunity to play this a couple of times, and I consistently am making the mistake where I'm like holding out for better people. Like, I think in both games, my lead singer's been like the last person I've drafted, because I'm like, no, I want the really good one. Yeah. I want a really good one. And inevitably I get stuck with the really bad one at the end of the game.
Yeah. No, I think the last time I played, I didn't end up with the lead singer at all.
I didn't either.
Yeah. And I went completely different way than I did the first time, because the first time I was all about getting that band together, and they weren't harmonious then. And my second group was definitely not harmonious, because there's one of the bonus cards, or what do they call them? They're not called bonuses cards.
They're the goal cards.
Goal cards,
yeah.
Thank you. That if you have band members that have they all have the same color on all 4 of their quadrants.
Yes.
And then you get a bonus if you have 3 different band members that have that same color on all their quadrants, but they have to be 3 different colors. And Andy did that the first game, and I was like, oh, wow, that was a winning strategy. And I tried it the second time, and it was not a winning strategy for me.
Well, Andy's got the winning strategy figured out, because I think you won both of the games we played, as I recall.
And I did something different each time. So like the first time I focused more on my band. The second time I had 2 guitarists or 2 band members. I didn't have a lead singer. I had 4 stagehands and maybe 1 producer.
Nice.
So my stage was immaculate.
But you went really, heavy into the tours, right?
I did heavy in tours and I did heavy in goals. Those were my 2 things that I went for in that last game.
Yeah.
And the goals, I think, paid off.
They did. Yeah, for sure. And it kind of depends, right? I kind of felt like I'm just going to let the goals kind of guide my game, what I'm going to do and work towards. And then if I get that, then sweet. Hopefully another goal comes out that's related, which the tour worked out well for me that game, because there were several goals that were related to the tour. And hitting that as hard as I did, which you have to do a bunch of other things in order to go on tour, right? You have to focus on other aspects, and which is not usually your band.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my band got ignored. I got max negative points for the scandals at the end, but I still ended up pulling out a win. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
I thought I would too was focusing on the goals, but I was focusing on them too late, because when I achieved them, they were gone. When I was almost at them, somebody was faster than me.
1 round ahead of you, right?
Yes, yeah. And then you were hogging all the tour cards that would advance my tour cards. So, I too was trying to get my tour to go, and it was not, we had a flat tire the whole time.
It is kind of cool, though. I like that tour and how it kind of has a branching path, and certain paths have to be unlocked with money. You got to pay for them and everything. But in the upper corner where you start, it's the garage, right? It labels it as like the garage. So it's kind of this cool evolution from like being a little dumpy garage band all the way. I think the biggest, furthest away, I guess I should say, location that's worth the most points is like the Sydney Opera House.
Right.
So you can go from garage band to like worldwide, world renowned rockers kind of thing. I find that thematically incredibly cool.
Yeah.
So this is one that I'm excited to play again and again. I've got a couple little expansions. There's 2 little expansion packs for this, and I'm excited to mix those in and see if that changes it up much and explore this a little bit more.
Yeah,
really
I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and I'm looking
great.
forward to playing it again.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Very cool. Well, that was my highlight, definitely.
So I got to play Alien Fate of Nostromo.
I'm interested.
I've played this. We played it a couple times with Brian Hirschbach, and that is it's a co-op game, and it is really, really difficult. We played it twice and completely lost twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're moving around the board trying to avoid the aliens, right? And they're moving, trying to attack you. And you have certain goals, and they change. The goals are random at the beginning of the game, and you're moving around the ship trying to accomplish your goals and escape. And yeah, we failed miserably. The first time miserably. The second time we were close, but it's tough. I was surprised how difficult it was. I can't say that it was one that I thought was incredibly fun that I wanted to just run out and buy. It probably won't end up on my shelf. In fact, I know it won't end up on my shelf, but it was definitely an interesting cooperative experience. And the fact that they made it to where it was not a walk in the park, I do.
That's always nice.
Yeah, I like that aspect of a cooperative game when it is there. It is a real challenge.
So 2 quick questions. One for you, Doug, and one for you, Andy. Andy and I'm pointing at Doug. Doug, this isn't the one, Another Beautiful Day in the Court.
No, that's different. That was Gale Force 9. This one is Ravensburger.
Okay. All right.
And yeah, they are different. And okay, to be clear, and this is like, if you don't know, you don't know, but most people probably know that there is like, this one is Alien, right? Fate of the Nostromo. So this is based on like the first movie, the Ridley Scott. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And the Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core is based on the sequel to that, which was the what's his name, the Titanic guy and the Avatar guy, Cameron. James Cameron. Yeah. So it's based on the James Cameron sequel, Aliens.
Okay.
And it's fantastic. I actually really want to play that one with you guys sometime, and I'd be interested in at least trying this one.
Yeah, I would be too.
You know, it was interesting. So you play as the different crew members, and they all have asymmetrical powers. I thought some of them were incredibly good, and other ones were just kind of meh.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Not well balanced.
I didn't think so. Like there was some that's like, why would I do that? It's, I think you have 3 actions, and it's like I would rather just like I could do that with one of my actions. Essentially, there were definitely crew members that seemed weaker than others, I would say. So there were some that's like, okay, if you're going to play a 3-player game, you're basically playing with these 3 people, and you leave the weaker ones out. Which I didn't like that aspect. I'd rather it be
I agree.
one of those where it's like, okay, there's not an obvious choice.
Yeah.
And you're not getting hurt or super benefited by picking or not picking different crew members. And I just didn't. There was a lack of balance, I thought.
All right. So my question to you, Andy, is when did you have time to play this with Brian while you had Shadows of Brimstone on the table?
This is one I haven't talked about. We played it a month ago at SaltCon.
Oh, okay.
So
I was just wondering if you had something on the sly that you were meeting with Brian, excluding us.
Oh, you didn't know about Saturday morning game night?
Yeah, I see where I stand.
We've invented a new day of the week. It's in between Friday and Saturday.
I like it. I like it.
Well, please let that be real.
Yeah, that would be nice. But yeah, this really. And how does this compare to something like Nemesis? Nemesis is a much grander scale, I'm betting.
Yes.
Since this only has a 60-minute time frame.
I actually really liked the playtime a lot.
Okay.
That was one of the strong suits for me. And the fact that you still get that anxiety and the aliens chasing you and everything, you still get that feel in a shorter game. That being said, I've had like a 15-minute Nemesis game, so
that's true. You have. It took way longer, 3 times as long to set up the table for Nemesis than it did to play.
Yes, it did.
Nemesis.
Oh my goodness!
But overall, I like Nemesis more. There's just
because it's more beefier. There's more to the game.
There's more to the game. There's more to do. It's you're not just going around and picking stuff up. There's actually things you're doing. You have your own private objectives that you're trying to accomplish. And yeah, I think Nemesis is definitely a stronger game than this, but the lighter version, I mean, I was willing to play it twice with the short. I think it took us a half an hour each time. So yeah, not bad. Really not bad.
All right. So I got 2 games that I've actually talked about before, but I'm excited for some content that I've added to those. These are 2 Kickstarters that, Andy, you picked up, and as soon as you picked up and introduced me to them, I was very upset that I did not back these games. And these 2 games are
Shake That City and Tiny Turbo Cars. Both of these games I got the retail versions of, and they both work fine.
The boring versions,
exactly right. And so for a long time, for Shake That City, the Wild Nights expansion was unavailable. And for a long time, the Tiny Turbo Cars, the Speed Up expansion, which expands your game from 4 players to 6 players and gives you a variety of new content, new cars, was all unavailable. And so recently I found out and discovered and picked up all the expansions for Tiny Turbo Cars, including the Speed Up expansion, which I'm way excited for. And I also was able to pick up the Wild Nights from AEG and the Tiny Turbo Cars from the Horrible Guild. You go to the company's website, you can pick up that content. And then while I was there, I was way excited too, because I got the Kickstarter exclusive for Calico. I got the Kickstarter exclusive for several other games. The Captain is Dead and a couple other things that I can't remember. But I was just really excited to get this stuff. And so I'm anxious. Doug and I have been playing Tiny Turbo Cars on BGA.
I've decided I hate it.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. I've decided that I hate it.
I've run into some issues where I'm like, but I still enjoy. I'm still having fun with it.
So it is important to note, and I don't know if you're playing this live, like where you're both playing at the same time, maybe they just say go and set a timer. It's possible. That would be an easy thing for them to do. We are playing it asynchronously.
Yeah.
Which means that instead, one of the funnest parts of Tiny Turbo Cars is when everyone flips their controller over and you race to try to get all of your little symbols all lined up. And what they've done is they give you, it scrambles your controller, and then they give you 30 moves. And I can tell you right now, 30 moves is not enough given how scrambled that that controller
You
is.
are correct.
Now you can sit and you can study it all day long and try to maximize how you're going to move that around to get exactly, the right movement or whatever. I mean, you could sit with it for an hour if you wanted to. I think it takes so much of what makes tiny turbo cars awesome right out of the experience. So
I try to do it as quick as I can. I'm like,
I do too.
I do really quick movements to try to emulate that anxiety that you have playing. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is not the same. And for some reason, I am exceptionally bad at playing online too. I don't know why you're so mad, Doug. You've won every game that we played.
Only by luck. Only by just dumb, stupid luck.
Well, and fortunately that when you're playing tiny turbo cars at the table, a lot of that comes down to luck too, of what you can get down, because you're anxiously trying to shuffle that board, get that happy token to be first, and be able to move and manipulate and to hopefully dodge the water that's on the board, not get stuck on the toys. And I've hit that water and ran myself in a corner and been stuck for 3 turns because I'm stuck on a toy. I can't back up. I can't move over. I'm just stuck. And that's been bad times. But I still really love this game, and I am way excited that I was able to get these Kickstarter, or not necessarily exclusives, but this Kickstarter content after the fact, which I love when a company says, hey, we got Kickstarter content. If you're early backers, you get it right from the get-go. Otherwise, and it's been almost a year since Tiny Turbo Cars
pretty
came
close
out.
to that, yeah.
And here I am, late to the party, because, I missed the Kickstarter. I wasn't aware of its awesomeness when it came out, but now I don't feel like I am totally out of luck. I'm still in the game, right? I'm still able to get it, and I'm still able to get it and be excited about
You're
it.
still in the race.
Still in the race.
It was a great value for the people who backed it.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't anything exclusive, which means you weren't cut out of the party in the long run.
Exactly.
So nice.
Which, not to go off on CMON, but I'm going to go off on CMON. We all hate those Kickstarter exclusives.
And I'm totally going to cheer you on. You are 100% right.
Yeah.
Preach on.
Hate that.
Well, I did find on Game Steward the Presidents for Zombicide,
Which is, I think,
which was amazing. However, for that one little box of characters, $60.
Oh my word.
Well, I think we were talking about this the other day, right?
Holy cow.
I ended up calling my Unmatched, and not because I don't think Unmatched is a great game, because Unmatched is a great game, but the completist in me looked for the Bruce Lee expansion,
Yeah,
and that was $300.
that's crazy.
And and Doug owns Doug owns all of the Unmatched, and so I can play it with Doug. So at that point,
If I can't have all of it, I'm getting rid of it.
Yeah, I'm out. If I can't beat Doug, I'm out.
I do wish you had kept the Marvel stuff, though, because I am not collecting any of the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. And how often do we really play it? I love Unmatched, and I'm probably will continue buying some of the more interesting sets that they release. But it has to stop at some point, because it doesn't get played enough to justify buying everything that comes out.
No, you're absolutely right.
So then where you draw that line in the sand is, I think, it's a personal choice for starters, but it's also a difficult choice, I think, especially if you're a completionist.
Yeah. And for me, that is an issue. But anyways, that's highlights. So I'm way excited. Tiny Turbo Cars and all of its glory is in my collection.
That's good.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Shake That City and all of its glory is in my collection, and now I can teach it to my wife without telling her that Andy's game is better than mine.
Did you get the upgraded components too?
In what? In which one?
Tiny
Turbo Cars. Yes.
The batteries and awesome.
Yeah, the wood batteries, the wood smiley tokens.
Awesome.
Great.
All that, the slippery tokens. Yes.
Sweet.
You had me worried. I thought you mentioned, or you were saying something in Shake That City that I was missing, and I was like, oh. But yeah, no, all the upgrade stuff. The only thing I am missing is I didn't get the deluxe box, which holds everything.
Yeah, I don't have that either.
And so I have to keep all my expansions separate.
Well, I guess it holds everything but the extra controllers.
Yeah. And so I have to find some way to either condense those all into one box, removing the insert, or, and the insert works really well.
It does, yeah.
And so I hate to just throw out an insert that works really well. But, and then I'm going to go off for just a quick second. If you're going to release a game, you better dang well make sure that expansion box same size as the
base game,
as the base game,
or at least
for sure.
at least width and length, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I understand, like, going back to Tiny Turbo Cars, the little booster boxes. I mean, they have just one thing. You're not going to make that big box for that little thing. But I'm looking at, on my shelf, I picked up Seven Wonders Architects Metals.
Oh, it's not the same size.
And it's not the same size. I mean, that box totally could have been same width, length, so that it could stack nicely on the same shelf.
Can you just throw that content in to the Architect's base box, though?
I may have to digress and open up my box of metals, because I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
But no, the base box of Seven Wonders Architects is very full and works very well.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
So depending on what all that content is in Seven Wonders Architects Metals, it may be able to fit in there. And I can apologize to Repost Production, but I'm reluctant to even open that expansion, because I'm just mad that the boxes, I can't stack them next to each other. Because
It really is true, though.
Yeah, all of my boxes are stacked. All my shelves are stacked by box size. And so when I have to put an expansion for something else on a different shelf, or put it on the top of a shelf so that it can overflow that 1.5 inch, half an inch, that it's different shape, oh, that makes a feller mad. Makes this filler mad. But anyways, that is not part of my highlights.
It does though. It needs to either fit in the base box or match the base box somehow. And you can tell that there are a lot of productions that go out of their way for that, because you open the expansion and you're like, this box doesn't really make sense for these components, but it matches the base box, so I'm real happy about it.
Or you look at a prime example, Heat, Pedal to the Metal.
Yeah.
That box has a ton of space, a ton of empty slots, because they're waiting for new content.
Yeah, plan ahead.
Yeah, and the new expansion, Wet Roads or Wet Hazards, I can't remember that right off the...
Torrential rain.
Something
like that.
I think that's the...
Heavy rain.
There you go, Heavy Rain. And that only has 2 new cars in it, but that Heat box, the base box, has space for 3 cars.
Yep.
So they're leaving room for another expansion. And I'm okay with that. If you're going to make it so that that expansion box can fit right in there, and I'm talking prematurely, right? I haven't seen this expansion box for Heavy Rain yet. It might come in the shape of 7 Architects Metals, and I'll be just as mad at that. But looking at the base content so far, I am hoping that that Heat Pedal to the Metal box will nicely fit in that expansion.
Let's take this to the next level. If they really plan ahead and they want to have an expansion box and not have it all fit, making the artwork match so it looks even better on your shelf
Exactly.
adds that much more to it, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay, now that looks amazing.
Yeah, I mean, somebody who does that better than I ever knew anybody I've seen so far is Canvas. Right, the 3 Canvas expansions, and you can put those 3 boxes, set them out right next to each other. It's a continuous panoramic painting.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that though. If we're going down this rabbit hole, let's talk about that, because you can't set those on the shelf sideways. They don't match. You have to create a panorama out of them.
Right.
So that's kind of one of those things where I'm like, ooh, I see, because I don't know what I like better. Now you take something like A Feast for Odin with the Norwegians expansion. And the 2 sides of that box match up to form a nice image.
Oh yeah,
side by side on the shelf, right? So
so that you can put it bookshelf style.
Yeah, bookshelf style. Canvas doesn't do that, but if you're gonna hang those boxes on the wall, that's an incredible panorama.
Yeah. Which Canvas? I mean, at least the Kickstarter. I don't know about the retail version, but the Kickstarter version has a nice hanging hole mount in the back, so that you can put 3 nails in your wall and have that panoramic picture hanging right there on your wall. But yeah, good times. Anyways, that's highlights.
We could talk a lot about this, and that, because that segues right into conversations about inserts and everything else. But we'll maybe not digress quite that far today.
Yeah, we'll save that for another one. So let us know what you find annoying about some of the games that you've put out, or you find that is amazing with some of those games that you've picked up. At this point, let's get to the meat of the episode, the main
event.
The soup du jour, so to speak.
Indeed. I say indeed way too much.
Indeed.
Indeed you do.
All right. This week we are discussing one of our favorite non-campaign mechanics, and that is deck building, pool building, and bag building games. all these games will begin with a limited supply of resources, whether that's tokens in your bag, cards in your hand, supplies available to you. And then throughout the game, you're going to expand that, thin it, refine it, make it work better and stronger and faster for the individual player. And how you do that all depends on the player, what's available to purchase, what's available to add to your hand, to your deck, to your bag. All of those things make a great game and a lot of content that we collectively own and a lot of overlap.
100%. Yeah. I think when we talk about this mechanic, we're talking about deck, pool, and bag building games. I think where our hearts truly lie, just like Hobbits' hearts truly lie in good, rich soil, or how does the narration of that go?
Good tilled earth.
Good tilled earth.
There you go. Yeah.
The Meeple Nation hearts, where our hearts truly lie, is in the deck building. But that is not to say that we don't have some fantastic bag and pool building games. We just have a lot more of the deck builders. We'll probably talk about more of the deck builders than we will some of those others.
And it's kind of funny. I'm looking over spoiler alert for our top 5s for next week. There's only one duplicate.
Yep. Only one duplicate. And I thought it was interesting because I was looking over those earlier as well. And I think there's only one. Nope, there's two. There are 2, 3. Oh, I'm totally wrong. There are 3 bag builders. I thought there was only 1 or 2 bag builders. There's 3. So we do have 3 bag builders on there. I think all the rest would fall under deck building. Although I'll talk about this when we talk about our top 5s. One of mine, you could make an argument that it's more of a pool builder than a deck builder, but we'll get there when we get there.
Yes.
I think
which are all allowed in the pool, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. I think we have to start this conversation off with Dominion, right?
Yes.
We all own Dominion. It's the king, the grandfather, maybe?
The grandfather.
The grandfather of deck builders.
Yeah.
And is one that we all really own. This is one that Andy has made custom content for.
Yeah.
I have.
And it's good. I mean, it's great custom content. Andy made his own expansion set for Dominion.
Yeah, even I had to buy when they came out with the second edition of Intrigue. I bought the whole box just so I had cards to use because I would just print them off on paper and then use my sleeves and just slide them right in and still have the same backer and
Love that.
Yeah,
that brings me memories of playing the old customizable card game Star Wars when I didn't own enough cards. I was like, oh, I got a copy of this card. I'm going to put that in there so I can make it for my deck. Or when new content was released and you're like, okay, that's what this is going to be. We're going to write all that information so we can start using those cards in our deck. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you did it right. You got all those spare cards.
Yeah, I try to make them look so you couldn't tell, right? And you have to look really close to not tell that this is just a piece of paper slid into a sleeve with another card, right?
Yeah.
So I think they look all right. And my wife and I, we brainstormed a lot trying to come up with a bunch of different cards because we played it so much. It's like, hey, let's just come up with our own. And this was before there were a million expansions to Dominion. Now that wouldn't be an issue of we need some more variety.
Right.
Yeah. But back when there were only I think it was just Seaside, Intrigue, and the base game. And we started just throwing out cards. Let's just start making up our own. And we did. And it was fun. It was fun to create it. And it's been fun to play it, throw it into and see how it interacts with the other expansions. And I love Dominion. It's a great game.
This is one of those games that make me laugh because, Andy, we always joke that how similar your wife and my wife are in personality and tastes.
Yeah.
And then you bring up Dominion. And my wife dislikes Dominion so much.
Does she really?
Oh, she despises it.
Huh.
And my girls, they both loved it, and they both own a copy of it. But yeah, I could not get Cheryl to play this game for nothing. Yeah, she just would, nope. Turn her nose up at that every time. And I'm like, this is such a great game.
Yeah, this is obviously the first time I was introduced to a deck builder. It was a brand new concept that came out, and we ran away with it. We thought it was just amazing. It was something brand new. It was I equate it to like the first time I played Puerto Rico and just how fresh it was and interesting, and the fact that it played fairly quickly. So there were game nights. That's all we would do. We would just play Dominion over and over and over and over again and see what new card combinations would come up. And we never got bored. And this went on for months.
Yeah. Well, and you're not the only ones.
No.
You know, that was the familiar tale. And that's the thing about Dominion is that it is such quick snappy, raw deck building that you just go, and especially at 2 players, which honestly is probably its sweet spot, because you just go, right? By the time you have shuffled up and looked over your cards and planned out your opponent's basically done with their turn. And so you're just always doing something. It's just back, forth until it ends. And then you're just like, oh, let's do it again.
Yep. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Yeah. No, I really like Dominion. And I think it set a pretty good standard for what a deck builder should be back in the day when it came out. And like we said, it's the grandfather of deck builders.
Yeah. For
good reason. I want to throw out another one that I consider in the, maybe it's not the grandfather, but it's a grandfather adjacent when it comes to deck building. Wise Wizard Games has Star Realms and Hero Realms.
Yeah.
And I think both of those, they play very similarly. There are some differences, but, it's one's basically, space sci-fi themed and one is a fantasy theme, but they're both pretty pure deck building experiences. Now, once you start adding in all of the expansions and campaigns and all the additional stuff that they've released for both of those games, they diverge and do some other interesting things. I think they get a little bogged down, but those original games, which have been out for a long time, I think are also, I think they also set a high bar when it comes to what a deck building game should be. And much like Dominion, they're just really fast, snappy games. They've got fun decisions to make because the market, there's enough variety there to lead you down several different paths. You've got to make some interesting decisions. They don't overstay their welcome. And again, when you're done with them, it's like, well, hey, we could just shuffle that up and do it again.
Yep. Over and over again. Yeah. In fact, one of the first BGG cons that I went was the release of the last Dominion expansion, and I got the opportunity with Brent that we were down there together, and we just busted out the base set and the new expansion, did all those combinations, and played through all of them. And that was back when I was really focused on my 10 by 10 goals, and so Dominion was on my 10 by 10, and we busted out all those. You could do that pretty easy anyways, but it was all new content with, experiencing all those new cards of that expansion with the base game. And I love that game. There's so much goodness, fond memories associated with that game. And it has changed the hobby dramatically.
Very much so. Yeah. So that led me because of my love of Dominion, that led me to purchase Legendary, a Marvel deck builder.
Yes, me too.
And I was disappointed.
Yeah, I didn't get to play this one until just last year, but I was kind of disappointed in it too.
I love this game.
Yes, I really like the Alien version, and I really like the 007 version. I'm not a big fan of the Marvel version.
Yeah, and I have played this game. It was back before I was tracking games. I'm sure I've played this game well over 250, maybe 300 times, and we would just play this game over and over and over again. And it was one of those games that kind of was the first that kind of gave me that bitter feeling, that bitter taste of that semi-cooperative. And I've changed my opinion of that quite a bit, because I've changed the outlook on that, because there is, life is a semi-cooperative game, right? We're working together. The three of us are working together on this podcast to try to make it good, but each of us are trying to make our own roles in our own lives work better, right? We're not necessarily in competition with each other, except for my collection is bigger.
My toppers are bigger.
Your toppers are bigger.
My games are better.
Doug, your family's awesome. And
wow.
But I just never really had a show-off contest, except for Unmatched, and you won.
There you go. I got the Unmatched trophy.
Yeah. I've never had Doug. You've always been really nice to just hang out with. No, we haven't had a contest where I've drawn a line in the sand.
Why do I need to enter the arena? Between the two of you competing, I get access to pretty much all the games I want to play.
You're winning, right?
Everything's a contest.
So the real winner is me.
Everything's a contest with Nathan. So I'm sure he's competing with you somehow.
I'm sure I probably am. There's I can't think of anything that's coming to mind, but apparently you're still winning because I don't realize I'm losing. But anyways, yes, that's all over the place.
Okay, but I get your point, and I know it doesn't bother some people as much as it bothers others. But the one time I got to play this game, it definitely led to that situation where it was like, okay, the only option I really have, it was me, you, and Mike that were playing it,
Right.
And you and Mike were kind of head to head. I mean, you were back and forth. It was kind of like between the two of you. I was lost, clear at the back before we even hit like the midpoint phase of the game. I just hadn't been able to build anything that was really working. However, I could have done stuff that kind of tanked the game, like because the thing is, it was going to be one of you that won, or we could just all lose.
Yeah.
And it's like, the thing is like, you kind of feel bad. It's like, well, like, okay, so is that my best option, is just to try to force it to where we all lose? But that's what the mechanisms of the game are telling you to do.
Yep.
I mean,
No,
that's built in. It's not like you're not being a jerk by doing that, because that's built into what the game is telling you to do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
And so, but it makes you feel bad. And I don't like that. I don't like being put in that position where it's like, I don't mind losing, but it was like, okay, like I've clearly lost this. This is going to be one of those two. So maybe the best case for me is to just tank this game. See if I can make the AI or whatever win.
Right.
And that's not satisfying either. So I don't know. I struggle with that a little bit.
Well, it's the same thing when we were playing Kanban EV, right? And you were very upset.
Wow, you're bringing that up.
You were very upset because anything I could do to try to make myself better
was feeding right into Andy.
Was feeding into Andy. So I could do nothing.
Yeah.
Or I could make a failed attempt to do something in hopes that Andy had enough of winning and could do something else.
Well, no, you're 100% right. Because the position that it put you in was, I either can do nothing and tank my own game, or I can king make Andy.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's what you did. I mean, because
there was the chance, right? I mean, Andy was going to take advantage of everything I was doing.
Yeah.
But the only chance I had was to make some sort of an effort to...
Well, the only chance you had to get any points or make progress. It wasn't, I mean, at that point, neither one of us really had a chance to win the game.
Right.
But it was the only chance you had to progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I see that a lot of that with these semi-cooperative games. But I think that my opinion of them has changed over the years, that I always hated that they were called semi-cooperative because there's always only one winner.
So let me ask you this.
Yes.
Okay, so and that's fine, and I've heard this argument. I mean, there's people have strong opinions on both sides when it comes to semi-cooperative. But if somebody does tank the game because they're losing, like, do you look down on that person? Because that's common, right? There's people who are like, well, you freaking jerk, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Definitely.
And it's like, because the game asked me to.
Yep.
Like, I mean, the game allowed me to do it. And I think that's maybe what I have a problem with, is because it does translate into some real world feelings between players.
Oh yeah.
I can see that.
And I've had many experience where I've played with people that have done just that. Like, well, I'm out, so I'm just gonna let it happen. I'm not gonna do anything I'm gonna allow the villains to overrun the city, and we lose.
Yeah.
And and that's fine.
Yeah, and so I guess ultimately my point is, if you're going to be okay with semi-cooperative games, you've got to be totally okay with somebody doing that to the game.
For sure.
You really do.
Or find a group of play with. If you don't like it, then play with the group who nobody likes doing.
And then you
that,
just
right?
make
like
it
you all agree
completely
that no matter
cooperative
what,
game.
Yeah. But at that point, then it really is just completely cooperative.
Yeah.
Right. There's no semi about it.
Yeah. That is allowed for people to make their own house rules. Shut your mouth.
Yes, it sure is.
But I have seen people that have played like that, and I have seen people that have, that are not necessarily ultra aggressive, but if there's no path for me to win, there's no way I'm in a king make. I'm just gonna sacrifice the game.
Well, that's a fun side tangent, but we're not
We've
actually
had a lot of those this episode.
Yeah, we're not actually talking about semi-cooperative games. We are talking about deck, pool, and bag building games. I want to talk about. I'm just going to kind of go through all three of these at the same time because they get lumped in. But so in recent years, I have absolutely fallen in love with these sort of half deck building, half worker placement hybrid games. So I'm thinking of the three big ones that get compared, or at least talked about, in the same conversation a lot, which is Lost Ruins of Arnak, Dune Imperium, and Endless Winter Paleo Americans. They have a deck building component and a lot to do with worker placement. Now, I want to avoid spoilers for top fives, but I did find it interesting that only one of these games is going to be talked about in our top five, of all time. And I think that's because as good as that sort of card and like, I'll be honest. Okay. So Lost Ruins of Arnak is not really a deck builder. It's a little bit more of it's more of a pool builder. Yeah. Or hand management. You have a pool. I would say more hand management. You have a pool of cards, or you're managing a hand of cards. Just some are unavailable in a deck. Do you know what I mean? Yep. It's such a light deck builder. Dune Imperium, I think, has a lot more deck building to it. And Paleo Americans, depending on how you play, can have actually a lot of deck building built into it. But I thought that it was interesting because I would have been prone to maybe put all of these on a top whatever list, but just because they're the hybrids and emphasize that worker placement so much, none of them made my list. So I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler, but they're all excellent. And I do really like that deck building aspect of all three of them.
No, I think you're right. And I really do enjoy how they kind of blend that in together. Cause you have Great Western Trail, which is similar along that. I mean, that deck building is more heavy in that for sure, but you do have your worker that you're moving up the path and trying to get to the city wherever you sell your cattle.
Kansas City.
Thank you, Kansas City. Yeah,
Andy with the save.
Yes, way to go, Andy. But it is all about the hand management, right? And the deck building. You're trying to make sure that you have cows where you start off with those basic cows, and you're trying to upgrade to the I can't remember the cows' names, but the red cow, the blue cow, and the yellow cow, which is definitely not the cow's breed. But
there's not red cows.
There's no red cows out there.
Oh man.
But you can find them in the red meat category.
Great Western Trail lied to us.
Yeah. But still, even going to the same with not the Argentina one, but the New Zealand version, where it's no longer cows, it's sheep.
Oh, that's right. They changed that, didn't they?
And just all that variety, I love that. Great Western Trail does it really well, where you're trying to manage that deck. You're using your hand to manipulate out those old cards to try to maximize that hand, but yet you're following along that serpentine route that has a couple of little variants, and then it provides a wide variety of you're trying to manage the train stations, you're trying to score points here, there, and everywhere. I think Great Western Trail, Argentina, 2nd edition, 1st edition, I think all those are done really well. I really enjoy this series, and I really enjoy the miniatures that somebody made for my game.
Yeah, cowboy hats not included, except in your copy. Very cool.
So that's where I'm winning. I don't know who else has Great Western Trail, but I'm winning.
Oh,
I don't.
Yeah,
that's too bad.
So there, I got you there, Doug.
Nice. Way to go. Way to go, Nathan.
Take that.
Oh, the burn.
As we discuss the deck building, you mentioned Great Western Trail. You mentioned some of these others that have a deck building component in them. And I do like the fact that we have these hybrid games because they can be amazingly fun. But then there's the games that are just pure deck builder games that I just thoroughly enjoy. I'm thinking DC Deck Builder. That's one near and dear to my heart. It's how I got my kids into gaming was DC Deck Builder.
I'll be honest. I was really surprised this wasn't on your top 5.
Yeah, I kind of was too.
It was close. Honestly, it's a fun game. I still enjoy playing it. I really do.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really simple. There just are some that are just more fun. But honestly, for as simple of a game as DC Deck Builder is, there's a lot of enjoyment to be had with it.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is fantastic. So I'm thinking DC Deck Builder, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. It's pretty much a straight deck builder, and we all love that game. It's a phenomenal game.
Yeah, that's another one I was a little less surprised, but I was a little surprised that one didn't make your list. Now, if Logan was with us, it definitely would have made his.
It would have.
For sure.
Would have been number 1.
Probably.
But for good reason. I love Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle.
Yeah, once again, I have some really fond memories playing that game, doing our BryceCon marathon of Harry Potter, right?
All
where we
7
played
years.
all 7 years.
Yep.
We've done the big, huge in the back of, I'm not sure. I think it's in one of the expansion rule books. It talks about how you can do this big, huge play with everything, this big epic game with all the content. And we did that and we won, and it was a bit crazy and a little long. But at the same time, that's the fun thing about Harry Potter Deck Builder, or the Hogwarts Battle, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, is it doesn't, the time flies. The turns are really quick. Everything just moves very quickly and nice, and it's smooth. It's not one of those that gets bogged down. Even with Dave playing, it's one of those games, and not to knock on Dave, because I don't want to do that, but Dave typically takes long turns. And in that game, he totally doesn't take long turns. It's a very, very fast-paced game, which I love.
Yeah, it's snappy. Even at 4 people, it's real snappy, and I like that a lot about it.
Yeah, going back to those core deck building games, there's Tyrants of the Underdark, which is one that I need to teach both of you guys.
I really want to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great game. Ashley, my oldest daughter, loves this game. Very much a heavy deck builder game. Scratches all the same elements. And same thing with Ascension. The Ascension series has, similar to Dominion, has several expansions that are out there. It has a reboot that's coming out that they're trying to reignite that interest. That actually might even be out. I'll have to double check on that. But Ascension is done really good. The only thing that bothers me about Ascension, and you'll run into the same thing with Dominion, is sometimes there's some really good art on there, and sometimes you're going, this is what you pick.
Yeah. Yep. And sitting on my shelf, I've got the Ascension Tactics. So it's the skirmish game. So it's got the board in the middle, and you are cooperatively fighting the AI, right? Fighting the monsters using that same deck building system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm really excited to get that out and play it. It's on my shelf of shame.
That's cool. That sounds pretty fun.
Yeah,
actually.
I want to get that out as soon as possible. Okay, I'm gonna go off the maybe the beaten trail here just a little bit. And get away from some of the like core, like just sort of straight up deck building experiences. When we ran, deck building, pool, bag building, whatever that mechanism is through the filters, one of the games that it kicked out for all of us was the Lord of the Rings Journeys to Middle Earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't have just knee jerk response been like, oh yeah, deck builder. That's just, it's so great. However, like deck building is like one of the core mechanisms to building your character. And I love that. I mean, what a fun implementation of deck building into this kind of big, epic, sprawling campaign game. And yes, some of that deck building is slow and takes place over time. You're not just throwing cards into that deck from a market.
Yeah, that's why it didn't make my list. That's one of the biggest reasons.
Yeah.
Is it's so slow to get cards changed over and get upgrades and everything.
Yeah. But given the card pool that's available for that game, and given the fact that you can multi-class, custom building a deck, which is how, like, that sort of core deck building mechanism is how you do tests, right? You have your pile, you flip it over, you test when you come across things as you're journeying and going through the campaign. That core mechanism is how you do all of that. So how you build that deck is critical. And the options and stuff that game gives you to do that, and the fact that you're gaining XP and can upgrade, get better versions, swap stuff in and out, I think is a really satisfying experience. I really like that a lot.
And that kind of moves us over into the living card game style deck builders, right? We have, Lord of the Rings, the living card game, and we have Arkham Horror, the living card game.
Marvel Champions,
right? You have all these that you're essentially building your deck ahead of time, and then you're upgrading those in between adventures as you gain experience or whatever the mechanism is.
Right.
And I've found, I haven't played, I have the base game for Lord of the Rings, I haven't played it, but I've played Arkham Horror a couple of times, and I have found that a really enjoyable aspect is the deck building that occurs actually outside of the game when you're trying to level up cards and decide what you want to put in. And that initial, all of that is actually really enjoyable, even though you're not really playing the game at that point in time.
I think you're still playing the game.
But, in a way, right?
Yeah. But I totally, I get 100% what you're saying. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Arkham Horror is my number one game of all time, especially now because that card pool is just so big.
Right.
And there's so many great choices to make. And you get, the game will throw 5, 6, 7, XP at you per round. And you just almost have to make these agonizing decisions about like, oh, what am I going to spend this on? How can I become the most effective? And it allows you to specialize, right? You're building that character into something special, something that they're better at and skilled at.
Yeah. I look at that almost like a very extensive and very cool tech tree, right? Where you're
sure.
almost unlocking almost endless combinations that you can put together. Like, oh, this would work great with this. And because like you said, Doug, the card pool is so extensive, your options are just way out there. And I'm a sucker for an awesome tech tree. And that's almost what that feels like to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially with some of the expansions and some of the cards, because they literally do, like, you meet the conditions on them during one play, and then you literally do have to make a decision about which version of that card you want to branch into.
Yeah.
The Seeker class in particular has quite a few of those cards where, during one of your plays, you meet a condition on it and it'll have you write down in the campaign log, like, okay, note that you found the solution or saw, like, decrypted the whatever, the message or something like that. And then when you go into the upgrade phase, you can then decide on like one of like 3 or 4 different versions of that card to upgrade into. So it is very much like a tech tree. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Andy is always a sucker for a tech tree.
Very much so.
So just to backtrack,
who isn't?
Just to backtrack just a little bit, that new version of Ascension is called Ascension Legends.
Yes.
And it should be launching on GameFound in the near future.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah. Now we have had this conversation, not to backtrack too much, but you mentioned the art. I really like the Ascension art. Like I like even the stuff that's not as good is, I think, still kind of fun. And I like that sort of indie flair that it kind of brings to the cards. Anyway, that's really not either here nor there. I like Ascension quite a bit.
So talking about the long haul deck building in Lord of the Rings Journeys Through Middle-earth, one game that does that mechanic, that deck building mechanic different than most all the others is Aeon's End. Aeon's End is where you're building that duck, you're building that deck and manipulating it. However, you're never going to shuffle that deck. And so that deck is, you're adding cards to it, and then you're going to flip that card, you're going to flip that stack over, and you're going to start flipping it over again. And it's going to follow that same path plus whatever you've augmented it with. I think that's a very interesting twist to that mechanic, and I very much like that that challenge, right? It's not your standard deck building. It's that deck building, but kind of looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah, because it makes you think about how you're discarding your cards and what order, so you can set up combos for the next round.
Right, yeah, because all that discard matters.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's been one of the fun things about this mechanic since Dominion came out, right? To see all the different implementations and different twists and turns that these game designers have come up with for that deck building mechanic. I think of John DeClaire with
that's where I was going next.
right, with Dead Reckoning.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's an integral part. You're playing cards, you're playing your crew. Now you have a static number of cards that never changes, but you are adding abilities to those cards. You're leveling them up as well. And you have full control of what's going to end up in your deck and then eventually in your hand for your turns, just like any deck builder, but it is done so differently. And you're not going to end up with a big old fat stack of cards. It's still very, you never lose any crew members. Your crew members are your crew members throughout the whole game. However, they just get better. Yeah. And some of the synergies that you can get in that game can be absolutely amazing if you can get the right advancements sleeved into your cards. But just the cool implementations of that deck building mechanic, like you talked about Aeon's End, with Dead Reckoning, with so many others that have made it so unique. And it's not just that I love just a straight deck builder, just pure deck building. I love those games, but I also really enjoy having those twists and that unique way of deck building.
Yeah, you have that Mystic Veil, Edge of Darkness,
right?
Dead Reckoning, all those. And I think Mystic Veil, Edge of Darkness all led up to Dead Reckoning, and Dead Reckoning is...
They nailed it. He nailed it.
Yeah, he worked out all of his bugs.
It's his his Opus Magnus? What? Oh, shoot. Dang it. I messed that up so bad.
Way to pull on Nathan.
Yeah. Is it Magnum Opus? Yeah. Or
Magnus Opus? Magnum Opus?
We'll have to cut all that.
Magnum PI.
Magnum PI.
It's his Magnum PI. It's the mustache.
It's the mustachio.
Yeah, it is definitely John DeClaire's Magnum Opus.
Yes, for sure. So kind of taking another twist on that pool building, one of these games that is completely not a deck builder, but falls in this category is Rolling Heights. Rolling Heights changed a lot for the game, right? Nobody else has really managed this quite the same. And I don't know if Rolling Heights does it perfectly. In fact, I'm going to say Rolling Heights definitely does not do it perfectly. But in this game, you're collecting and you're rolling meeples. and how those meeples land depends on what kind of resources or activities that you're going to get out of those meeples. You're going to shake them up. You can have a maximum of 10 in your hand. You're going to shake them up. You can shake them up in the box or throw them on the table. But it's getting those meeples to land in a way that is more effective. So if they land on both feet, then they're working hard. Or if they just they land on their side or their head, well, then they're just working. Or if they land flat on their back, and for a shape of that size, that's more likely going to happen than not, is they're going to lay flat. Well, then they're not working. And so you need to try to re-roll but not bust and have more of your guys not working than working, or roll and all of your guys are not working that you roll. Anyways, rolling height, I really love how you're shaking that up and making your meeples that you're going to use, instead of putting them in places, you're using those meeples to generate resources, to build buildings, to build your landscape, your cityscape up. I thought Rolling Heights did it really well. This is a game that I wish we actually got to the table more often, but there's so many other bigger, better games that kind of hog that space. Yeah. But Rolling Heights is a great game, but using that, it's not necessarily a bag building, but it is a pool building of those resources, those meeples, and using them to your advantage. I think Rolling Heights is great. And then
I couldn't get behind the meeple rolling thing. I thought D6 hated me. Yeah. Apparently rolling meeples is way worse.
Hates you a lot more.
Yeah,
yes.
It was interesting because the gimmick of that game is the thing that kind of killed it for me. But at its core, I think the game is really good. Like it offers a really fun puzzle. I mean, I actually really like it in a lot of ways. But all of mine like to land on their back.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yep.
Crack that whip, man.
Yeah. Yep. I tried.
Get them up and going.
I tried.
And another one that kind of reverses that whole deck building is a deck shedding game.
Abandon all artichokes.
Abandon all artichokes. Where you start with a hand of all artichokes, and you want to begin your turn or end your turn when you draw up to a hand that has 0 artichokes in it. So you're shedding those. You're collecting other cards to vegetables to get in your hand to get those actions. But both of those Rolling Heights and Abandon all artichokes kind of takes that whole different twist on that deck building mechanic, pool building mechanic, and use it different than most of the other games that are on these lists.
You know, and we talked about, I know I'm going back to Lord of the Rings again, but that slow progression. There's another game that I want to talk about that has a similar slow progression. It's not quite, well, in ways it is slow, just as slow as Lord of the Rings. In other ways it's not. And that's Pathfinder adventure card game.
Yeah.
Now you can find loot while you're in the very, very first mission that could be potentially better than what you started with. Most of the time you don't find anything that's better. Sometimes you do. But as you get higher level and you're going through the story, better cards get put in, and then you start unlocking different perks and things start to progress, right? It is definitely a slow roll as far as your character progression and your deck content, right? Because you have it, once again, you have a set amount of cards, and those, not only do you have a set number of cards, but you have very specific types of cards that you have to have in your deck. So my character may have to have 4 weapons, 2 spells, 1 blessing, 5 items or whatever. Anyway, but the other cool aspect or unique aspect about Pathfinder the Adventure card game is your deck of cards is your health.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
I do too. I think it's cool. So you're not only are you deck building and you're using your cards to the most effective way you possibly can, but that's how when you take damage, you're discarding from your hand. Your deck runs out, you're dead or you're knocked out, right? I think that's cool because it really adds a level of carefulness almost on what you're doing with your cards and what you're doing with your hand and managing that. And I think it's well done. It's one that my kids constantly pester me to play. We need to play this again. We need to play that. Yeah, I know.
You gotta work yourself up to that, to the setup and takedown of that game, though.
Yeah, you do for sure.
If you can get everybody helping, it's actually pretty quick.
It is. If you can get everybody working together. My experience is there's been one person who feels like they should be in charge. And then you just sit back and say, okay, you take the time, you do it all.
We'll wait.
And I'm going to be on my phone in the meantime.
Yeah. No, we usually pick up. It takes maybe 5 minutes to pick up, 5 minutes to maybe a little bit more to set up, just because you're trying to get the right number of cards in each location. But I just hand a card to each or a deck of cards to each person and say, okay, you do weapons. You put all of the blessings
this
in.
Is the way it should go.
And it's fast. It gets set up so quickly that way. And then
Yeah.
you just shuffle everything up and boom, you're on to the next adventure or the next part of the story. So, but that's a fun one. It's also got the slow roll. Maybe not quite to the extent that Lord of the Rings, because you can find stuff during the actual
No, I think it
sessions,
goes. It's a little bit faster progression, but yeah, it's still a slow roll.
Yeah, I think the thing that was frustrating for me when we played Pathfinder was that at the end of the first game we got experience, but there wasn't anything to spend it on.
Yeah.
And that was what killed it for me. But I do appreciate like you said, like the gear and loot and some of that stuff that you can find. I thought it was an interesting game for sure.
All right, I have a couple more that I want to hit on before we move on. One that I really, really like, but I need to find somebody else to play it with, is Moonrakers. Moonrakers is a great game, but neither of you are into that negotiation step of the game. That's like it's not a breaking point, but it's bending you pretty darn far to almost breaking. But I really like Moonraker. I really like the whole
the deck building is strong in that game.
Yeah,
it really is.
So I don't mind the negotiation, and I like that's a mechanic
you're
that
built for that a little bit more than I am.
Yeah,
anyway.
Both of you guys are very much. I want to be in control of my own domain and my own. I am the master of my kingdom.
Yeah,
and to
that's
have
true.
to work with anybody else is on your victory.
I am the master of my own domain and kingdom. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And you're doing it better than I am, too. But
I win.
You win, yes. But yeah, I have the Titan edition that came out that was nice, had everything in it with minus a couple other little things. But this is a game I was really excited about, but one that I'm bummed that we never get out.
I don't think we should shelf it yet though.
I don't know.
And I'd still totally play this. Here's what I think after some introspection. Okay. My complaints about the negotiation phase do stand. Okay. But I think as a 2-player game, you only have the other person to work with. And so I think it works. I think it actually works really well as a 2-player game. I think the souring experience was the 3-player game because you had perceptions at the table that were not necessarily accurate.
Oh,
and then
sure.
And then you had 2 people that were ganging up on 1. And it wasn't always me. Right. Like I'm not saying that because I feel like I was picked on or like I'm not like, oh, boo-hoo, whatever, but I think that it is prone to that. I think in a 3-player game, it leads to that like 2v1 in a lot of situations.
I would agree.
And especially when you're, got 2 players negotiating and working out all like coins and points and all this kind of stuff. That it doesn't feel very good as the one guy who's sitting there going like, well, I'm already losing this game. I guess the 2 leaders are just going to negotiate their way to the top.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. That's
so my solution is let's try it again, but let's not try it at 3-player. Let's do it at either 2 or 4.
Yeah. And that's what looking at the community, BGG's community says that this game is best at the 4 to 5 player level. Because I think you're going to eliminate more of that 2v1 kind of feel that you have 3 kids at the party and their job is just to peck on the other one.
Yeah. Yep.
I think I would be more on board with Moonrakers, and I probably could overlook the negotiation part of the game a lot easier if the artwork was better.
I quite like the artwork in this.
I was
It's
disappointed.
kind of slick. I like it. Yeah.
I was disappointed in the cards. I'm like, there's not really anything. Some of it is cool. I'll give you that. But some of it,
kind
I'm
of
just
more
like,
of a, it's more of a blueprint type thing.
yeah.
It's true. And it doesn't really, what's the word, transcribe or come across with the that blueprint thing that you're talking about, doesn't work really well with a lot of those character cards.
Yeah,
that makes the
character cards
characters
are
come
not-
across really kind of
Yeah.
cheesy.
Yeah.
No,
But-
I agree.
Yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from, Andy.
But I'm just a nerd and like cool components and cool artwork. So
Well, it is full of cool components.
The components
ships
are amazing.
Really good.
They are.
This Titan version is awesome.
yeah,
And-
you're not wrong there.
Yeah. And one last one that I want to talk about of games that I've played is one that I've just played recently, and that is the Terraforming Mars, the dice game.
That was fun.
Andy, you and I and Amara played that just the other day. Doug, have you already played this one?
Yeah, we played it. Richie taught it to Andy and I a little while before you got to play it.
Yeah.
And I like it. I think it's my least favorite way to play Terraforming Mars, but it was still really fun. I enjoyed it.
So I was thinking it was a way to play Terraforming Mars that was fun.
And see, I actually
Amazing how we differ.
yeah, and I actually very much enjoyed it. I don't know if I'd say it was more fun than the base game, but it was different. Right?
I liked it better than the base game, but that's because of my experiences with the base game. I didn't like it better than Ares Expedition.
Okay.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think, and we've voiced this at different times in the past before, I think ultimately all of us were a little bit worried. I think the community at large is worried about the Terraforming Mars brand because, they're going to keep throwing Terraforming
Here's
Mars
my money.
stuff out there. Yeah. As long as they think they can milk it for more money, they're going to keep throwing stuff out there. And the worry is that the dice game wasn't going to be very good and that it was kind of a cash grab. But it really is a solid little game. I don't think it was it was a cash grab, but it was a worthwhile cash grab. You know what I mean? Like it's one, it worked. And I think that's always kind of the worry, but it worked out. So I wanted to just throw out a couple really quick too. I have been loving Expeditions, Stonemaier games, that recently came out. This is the sequel to Scythe. Really love it. This is one that I personally would categorize. I think a lot of people would probably just consider it hand management. I think it's pool building. Now, I think you're building that pool with cards, but I think it's pool building because you have your hand and your active row and you are trying to manage those things, but you're constantly taking cards back and forth, and during the recovery phase, you're kind of bringing them back over into your hand section and you're choosing what gets played. It feels a little bit more like a pool of cards that you're manipulating. I guess hand management really is probably what it is, but I still think it belongs in this conversation. And I think it's really, really good. I would make a recommendation for people who like that really core base deck building mechanic and something that's a little more family friendly. I would recommend going out and checking out Summer Camp. Summer Camp is a great little deck building game. It's a pure deck builder and it's kind of cool. You're these, kids go into summer camp, and before the game, like when you're setting it up, you get to choose from like 7 or 8 different merit badges. You pick like 3, and that's what you make the sort of core deck out of. And you're just trying to kind of race along this track and earn your merit badges. And I think it's fantastic. And then the last one that I wanted to mention was just Queen by Midnight. We've talked about this one before. I think it has some really solid deck building mechanisms. However, it's very much a take that game. It's a pure take that game.
It is for sure.
And so if you like take that games and you like deck building, I think Queen by Midnight is awesome. If you don't like the take that stuff as much, it's probably one to avoid. But good deck building. Like the deck building that I think is pretty good. Yeah. So
any last ones from you, Andy?
Yeah. I just wanted to mention Colony.
I really liked Colony when it first came out. It just needed an expansion.
It was
so bad.
It was a really cool concept. You're mixing a really solid deck building with dice placement.
Yes.
And it was really neat, but you're right. It was missing something. It was just missing something. And I've actually really enjoyed the Star Trek deck building game. I think I finally found the last box that I was missing at the flea market at BGG, not last year, but the year prior. So I picked that up, and that's one that I don't play near enough, but it's one that I've enjoyed playing. I actually haven't busted out that expansion since I bought it. So I've had it for over a year and haven't played with the expansion I was looking for, but I've really enjoyed that. There are so many on my list that are on my shelf of shame with this mechanic.
Was my next segment here is what do you have on your shelf of shame that you're anxious to get to?
I have a ton. Now, one other thing before we get into that is that I wanted to talk about was Nightfall.
That's a good one. I like Nightfall.
And it's just very unique where you're chaining cards based on their colors. And it's one that I get such mixed reviews. Most people hate it.
Yeah,
it's just because the chaining doesn't really theme.
I think that was my review.
Yeah. Well, Dave is right there with you.
Richie really doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Dave doesn't mind it. He says. He'll play once, maybe every 2 or 3 years, and then he gets the floor mopped, and then he's like, okay, yeah, never mind. I don't want to play this again.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Nightfall. I think it's unique and fun. But yeah, I have a ton. Romance of the Nine Empires, Valley of the Kings, Conflicted, Survive the Apocalypse. I didn't even know I owned that game until it popped up on my list.
Oh, goodness.
So, there's a lot on here that I StarCraft, the board game. I've owned that for years and I've never played it.
That's one that's on your list that I really want to play.
We need to get it to the table. We really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have quite a few. Dragonfire, I've heard not great things about that game, but I want to try it.
You've heard that from me.
Yeah, I did actually. I did hear that from you. So take that for what it's worth. And Shadowrun Crossfire, this was a nerd tax for me, I think.
Oh, was it?
I've started the rules for it, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I paid a nerd tax because I'm a sucker for anything Shadowrun, and you have no idea how many times I have been burned because I'm a sucker for Shadowrun.
So that was the other one that was on my list that I made a list of games that were on your list and games that was on Doug's list that I was like, okay, these are games on your list that I want to play.
And it could be good. Like I said, I started the rules and I didn't get very far into them, but I was a little disheartened, and that's probably, I need to finish reading the rules before I really pass judgment. But just the very first part of it, I'm like, oh gosh, dang it, I did it again.
Andy pays nerd tax on Shadowrun like Nathan pays nerd tax on G.I. Joe.
Could be. You could be spot on with that. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to my list of unplayed games and some that I'm really anxious to get to the table. Astronauts is one that's on the top of my list that I haven't played. I've actually opened the box. I'm starting to read the rules for that one. Another one that I really want to get to the table is Sky Mines. This is one that I was kind of excited about, but put it on the shelf because I didn't want to play it with Dave. And so I still really want to get this to the table and try that out. Warp's Edge is another one that looks really good. That is, it's a pretty lightweight game. And Cry Havoc. Cry Havoc's one that I'm like 90% done with the rules, but for some reason I can't get finished with that last page because something else comes that I want to learn that first.
I want to learn that one too.
Yeah. And Doug, on your list, some games that I really wanted to get to. I really want to get to Scarface. Scarface is something that
Scarface 1920 is going to be one of my honorable mentions that I'll talk a little bit more about maybe when we do our top 5. But I love the deck building in that one.
And everything else on your list I can't talk about, Doug.
Because I'm going to talk about it later. Well, some of them that are on my shelf of shame. Tainted Grail. Now, this is one I have played a little bit, but it's been a couple years ago. It does have a deck building, mechanism to it. I want to get back to it. So it's just been a long time. I'd really like to revisit that. Mage Knight. I know nothing about Mage Knight, but it came up under this mechanism, so I guess it has some sort of deck pool or bag building game.
Yeah, this is one that's on my list too that I'd love to get.
Yeah, so I definitely want to check that out. Skytear is like a 2v2. It's sort of like a tower defense kind of thing, like really, really well done. So my daughter and I sat down and we played a game of this when I first got it like 4 or 5 years ago when it first came out. And I really, really liked it, but I just need to get back to it. And again, where it's kind of a 2-player and head-to-head kind of thing. It just hasn't hit the table, but the deck building in it was really fun. We already talked about Ascension Tactics and then Tamashi. Chronicle of Ascent. Now I don't know anything about that in terms of what the deck building mechanism or pool or bag building, I guess I should say, is, but it's a game I'm really excited for. And if it has that mechanism in it, that's one I really want to get to the table. So we've got plenty of games to get to, plenty to pull off the shelf.
Yeah, that's been my drive lately, is try to get some of those things off the shelf of shame. I'm not doing so hot.
Me either.
It's hard. It's hard to find time, but we're going to get there and we're going to talk about them at a future date.
That pretty much wraps up our discussion and our introduction of bag, pool, and deck building games.
Until next time.
We'll see you gathering those resources and revealing your best hand at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.